And we've been exploring the theme of success in many different dimensions. We talk about purpose, values or core values, and then our mind, the power of our mind, the subconscious mind, and also the conscious mind. So that's what we've been talking about. But today I want to talk about the power of self-talk. As I'm talking to you guys right now, there are 2 or 3 voices that you're hearing. Yeah? At every point in time, at least you're hearing 2 voices. You're hearing the voice of the speaker, and you're hearing your own voice, interpreting what the person is saying to you. And at times, you could actually even be hearing the voice of a total stranger, maybe a voice from your past. Like when I was growing up, one of the voices that I used to hear audibly was my older brother's voice. And he used to tell me, oh, you're lazy, you're this, and you're that. Well, maybe for someone else, it might just be a case of someone telling you, you're just not good enough. Or you can't do this, you can't do that. But at every point in time, you would always hear 2 voices. So I'm speaking to you right now, yeah? And your own voice, and that's the focus tonight. I want to focus on your voice to yourself. Because no matter what I say to you, no matter what I try to teach you, yeah, your own voice to yourself will drown anything that I say. Have you ever tried to tell somebody how beautiful, how well dressed they are, or how good they are at doing something, and they just play it down? Has that ever happened? Yeah. That's because of a truth. Most times they're not trying to be humble. They don't just believe it. Their own voice to themselves, what they're saying to themselves, is that I'm not good enough to deliver that kind of result. So your voice, in a sense, interprets or translates what you are hearing from the outside. So I'm saying things now. Your voice comes along as like an interpreter and takes what I've said, yeah, and plays it to you. But in that transition, what I've said to you has lost a lot of context. In fact, what I've said to you has been contextualized to your own way of thinking. So I could say, well, you're great. And your voice to yourself could say something like, we're great at doing nothing. You see what I'm saying? And your self-talk, or what you say to yourself, matters more than what anybody else says to you. So, we're going to Scripture. We'll look at one very important scripture that oftentimes when we're teaching about faith in Scriptures, we use this particular text that I'm about to read now. Okay? Let's look at Mark chapter 5, verse 26. Mark 5, 26. This is very important, because you will find that, or what I've learned is that most people that achieve success, yeah, they actually became successful before the actual success came into their lives, in terms of in its tangible forms. Mark chapter 5, 26, I said, yeah? I'll read from verse 25. He says, and a certain woman which had an issue of blood 12 years, and had suffered many things of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was nothing bettered, but rather grew worse. When she had heard of Jesus, came in the press behind, and touched his garment. For she said, if I may touch but his clothes, I shall be whole. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up. Now this is a woman who had a medical case, 12 years. Okay? Now when we teach on faith, we use this scripture, but I want to bring a different dimension to this text. Yeah? So look about a woman here who had this medical condition for 12 years, hemorrhaging. Women have menstrual cycles, but then it's supposed to be on and off. But this woman bled continuously for 12 years. I don't want to think too much about it, but imagine losing blood consistently for 12 years. Yeah, I can imagine that this woman will probably look very skinny, dry, and just more or less lifeless because she's lost, because your blood in a sense carries your life. It's almost like she was losing life. She was losing everything. For 12 years, she's not just losing things in herself, but also she had spent all her means on physicians, trying to find a solution to the problem. So she was spent in terms of her blood, spent in terms of her resources. She had no power. But then she heard that Jesus was coming into town. And this is where it comes in. This is the point. That scripture in verse 28 says, "For she said, if I may touch but his clothes, I shall be whole." She wasn't talking to anybody. Yeah? She might not even have been voicing it out for people around her to hear. But she was saying to herself that if I can touch this man, if I can only, start this business, if I can, open this account, if I can, meet this person, if I can, start getting into this relationship, if I can start to read this book, if I can do this, if I can do that, as opposed to what most of us are used to, which is, I can't do this, I can't do that, people like me don't get there, I won't be healed, all these negative things. And we're so used to hearing a lot of that. And what happens is that it demobilizes us. I know that because I've experienced it a lot. No, you guys you don't need to tell me, because I know that we all think in that way, or most of us. If you see a man that is not making progress in their vision, if you see a man that seems stuck, it's because more than anything else, that person is stuck in their mind. That is the truth. You're talking about limitless the other time, until you're able to open up all the valves in your mind, to see the endless possibilities of your physical being, your mental being, your spiritual being. You're not going to walk into it. And it says, "For she said," what are you saying to yourself? That's the question. Not what am I saying to you, because I can encourage you from now to tomorrow. But what are you saying to yourself? And you don't have to be saying it out for everybody to hear. When you are walking that lonely path, what are you saying? When you're on that job that you hate so much, what are you saying? When you're on the bus, or when you're even amongst us here right now, as I'm talking to you, what are you saying to yourself? If you're going to change your life, you have to change what you're saying to yourself. And that's the truth of the matter. There's a story that I want us to sort of touch on as well, to further buttress this one. And I think this is one of the stories that helps to see how the power of words can either demobilize you, or immobilize you, or mobilize you. Does that make sense? So your words could either immobilize, which means to sort of cause you to freeze and not be able to move, or mobilize you, or get you moving. 1 Samuel chapter 17. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shucco. Well, I don't think I got that right. Or they could as well gather in Westminster, which belonged to Judah, and pitched between Shucco and Azekah in Ephes Dammim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on the mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side. And there was a valley between them. So Israel and the team were on one side, but then the Philistines were on the other side, and they won't move, because there was an element of fear there, they didn't want to advance because they were all sort of immobilized by fear. I'm going to skip straight to verse 4. It says, and there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span, and he had an helmet of brass upon his head, and it was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. Verse 6, and he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield went with him. Have you noticed how they gave a full description of Goliath? And it's important to note that because a lot of us at times, you look at the challenge, the mountain or the challenge you're facing, if you visualize it, it's just massive. You look at, the many dimensions to it, or you see the medical report and it's just all, very detailed. Or you see the qualification to get into this role or to start a business, and it looks like an insurmountable problem. Okay? Coupled with the fact that, talking about Goliath here, he actually even had another dog's body, he had another guy with him. Yeah? But then David came onto the scene, and it's one of us to establish, to sort of look at what happened when David came onto the scene here. Okay, verse 8, I'll read from verse 8. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, why are you come out to set your battle in array? And am I not a Philistine, and you servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then we will be servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall you be our servants and serve us. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words, when they heard those words of the Philistines, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now, all the giants, all Goliath said, were what? Words. He hadn't done anything yet. Whether words in print or words spoken, But now these guys took what he said and they interpreted it by their own self to mean what? This is trouble. This is failure. We cannot break through here. We have failed this battle already. And that's what happens. So you hear voices of people tell you things that you can't do. Okay? And then, I think it's bound to, there's a story that I heard. I can't remember the full details, but there were two brothers that actually got man to fly.
Wright brothers.
The Wright brothers. One of them was Wilbur, and the other one was what?
Wilbur.
Anyway, the Wright brothers. Anyway, their dad actually was a preacher. Oh, you saw it in that book? Yeah. Their dad was a preacher, and their dad, even though he was a preacher, had set his own limits. The dad said, you know what? If God wanted man to fly, He would have given us what? Wings. Now, that just saying that alone could easily kill anybody's imagination. But seated in his pews were his two sons. Even though their dad had sort of spoken those words and set limitations over the people, in a sense. But those guys, even though their dad said it, what they were saying to themselves was different from what their dad was saying to them. Their dad was saying to everybody, well, men are not meant to fly. But they were saying to themselves that, you know what, we are going to fly. And they tried, they kept failing, but they kept trying, they kept failing, they kept trying, until they were able to sustain human in flight for a time. What am I saying? Now, it's not really what you're hearing that matters. It's how you interpret what you're hearing to yourself that counts. So the Goliath here was there, speaking words, and the words that he was speaking caused the Israelites to begin to fear. He hadn't done anything to them. There was a valley in between them. He hadn't crossed the valley. He was shouting from his own side of the hill across to the other side of the valley that, look, send somebody, let us fight and let me destroy that person. But he hadn't done anything. But by virtue of what he had said to them, they took it and interpreted it as failure, defeat. So ask the person sitting next to you, what are you saying to yourself? It's very important. And you see, the interesting thing about this is that when Goliath was saying all of these things, guess what? David wasn't there to hear it. Perhaps if he was there to hear it, maybe he would have also been afraid. But he wasn't there to hear it. So he came onto the scene after Goliath had finished speaking. And all he saw was this big dude. This guy that just came to defy God's army. And he just thought, you know what? I can take this guy out. Yeah? And that's because he hadn't heard what the guy was saying, at least at the time. Okay? So it says here, I'll read from verse 11. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistines, they were dismayed. Saul is the king, by the way. So if the king is dismayed, what should the other people do? Like I said, the father of the Wright brothers was already in despair about the possibility of man flying. So every other person in his congregation went down. That is why for me, when people come to me with an idea, I'd never knock it. I will never knock an idea. I can try to repackage it, but I'll never knock an idea. Because there's nothing that is impossible. And I know that if I knock an idea, because of the authority that I have over you, you might find it hard to pick up those things again. Many years ago, before I got into what I now do, as a pastor, someone said to me, okay, when I got into the role in the church, full time, one of my mentors at the time said something to me which I will never forget. But thank God that I've managed to overcome that. He said to me that, well, this job that I'm doing that I'm not really meant to, I can't do it. Now imagine hearing that from someone that is an authority over you, telling you that you can't do something. Yeah. For me, that just, like you had this big bubble and someone just took a pin and just poof, and the thing just went down. So over the years, I had to kind of rebuild myself to the point whereby I was able to overcome that thought. I had to grow within, and I had to say things to myself that really put me above those words. So, verse 12 says, now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and and he had 8 sons, and the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. I'm going to skip all this very quickly, because we need to just move on to where David came onto the scene. Verse 17 says, and Jesse said unto David his son, take now for thy brethren, that is your brothers, an ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how their brethren are doing, and take their pledge. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting the Philistines. There's a point there. You see, in life, don't try and fight from your low points. Yeah? When I say don't, it's because it says here, it says, Saul and the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah fighting with the Philistines. Now the devil's strategy is to keep you in the valley. Okay? Now, in your mind, for you to actually be able to overcome your battles in the valley, you need to, first of all, elevate your own thinking to the mountaintop. Yeah? When I say mountaintop, now elevate your thinking to where God is. The Bible says, for we are seated together with Christ where? In heavenly places, not in valleys. Your physical condition could be in a valley state. You could be there having no money. You could be in that valley with sickness in your body, yeah. But make sure that your mind or the things that you are saying to yourself, yeah, is not stuck in that valley mode. Do you get what I'm saying? So I could be without money, I could be without help or resources all around me. But as long as in my mind what I'm saying to myself, yeah, is able to get me out of that valley state, I will be fine. And that is why they say that most people that make money, maybe through lottery and all that, because of what they are saying to themselves, that money will just leave. There was a lady, one of these, very wealthy ladies, I think it was in America. She made a very profound statement. I think it's very important. She said that if I lost everything that I had now, all my wealth, and put me in a desert place, I will get it back. She understood what she was saying, and that's because she knows in her mind that wealth is not in the resources that you have, it's about your attitude, the way you see yourself, and the way you create your own mindset is about the things that you say to yourself. We are all talking to ourselves, but the question is, what are we saying to ourselves? So, verse 20 says, this is quite the last. I want you guys, it's a long read, but we'll just walk through it. Verse 20. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went. Well, that's interesting. And took and went, as Jesse had commanded him, and he came to the trench, as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army, and David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. So now he's hearing what the guy is saying, but it wasn't there when the guy was saying it the first time. Okay? But these guys had gotten used to this threat from Goliath. So for David, it was just new information. This guy making mouth, yeah, and David was looking at this guy, but who is this guy? Who are you? He says, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them, and all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were so afraid. I don't know what yours says. Mine says they were so afraid, which means they were so afraid it was hurting. Yeah? And the men of Israel said, have you seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. Sorry, I'm reading King James and I'm struggling with it badly.
Which verse?
I'm now on verse 25.
25.
What chapter are we on?
Okay.
Oh, okay. So you don't know.
Okay.
Verse 17.
17 verse 25.
Chapter 25, verse 17.
No, verse
17,
25.
25. Verse 17.
Okay. All right.
So listening, that's all.
You want to read that one?
You want to read?
Just read it. You read it from verse 24.
Verse 24. Okay, 17, 24. All the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were much afraid.
Much afraid. Okay. Yeah. Keep on reading.
And the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come to defy Israel. And the king will enrich the man who kills him with great riches, and will give him his daughter,
Okay.
and make his father's house free in Israel.
Good. Okay. We're going to continue, but just hold that thought. Guess what? David heard the threats of Goliath, but he also heard the rewards from the king. And he thought, hold on a minute, I like this reward. With what this guy is promising, I can deal with this guy. Okay? Yeah, so read on.
And David said to the men who stood by him, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine, and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God?
Okay, hold on there. Okay. Now this is what David is saying. Goliath has said his own thing, but this is not what David is saying. Okay, keep on reading.
And the people answered him in the same way. So shall it be done to the man who kills him. Now Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, Why have you come down? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness?
Skip to 32, verse 32.
Okay.
In your time, read the whole chapter, I guess.
And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine.
Okay, yeah, keep on reading.
And Saul said to David, You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth.
Okay.
But he has been a man of war from his youth.
Yeah. Now again, Saul, the king, was now trying to listen to what the king is saying to David, discouraging him from going. I mean, if it was you and I, you're telling me, you know what, I'm going to get a job in the square mile. And I, as your pastor, is saying, people like you don't get jobs in square mile. Yeah, or you're saying to me, or you know what, you're going to make so and so money, or you're going to reach so and so people for God, and at times even the silence of the people around you, in a sense, could also be discouraging. They haven't said anything, but they've said a lot. I don't know if you know what that means. But you're looking for encouragement. That's why last week I said to you guys, there are people that I go to when I have an idea. There are people that I go to because I know that they will challenge me to even take it further. Okay, but keep on reading.
But David said to Saul, Your servant used to keep sheep for his father. And when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God.
Okay, good. I like that. That is, again, have you noticed the difference between what David is saying and what Goliath is saying, as well as what the other guys, the king included, Saul, and the other army, the other military guys in David's camp? Can you see the difference in what they are saying to one another? Whilst for David, it's all about, you know what, I can do this, yeah? I can kill this guy. I've done, I've won smaller battles, yes, well, I can deal with this guy. This guy has no right to be attacking God's army in this way. I would go and fight him. And we're trying to discourage him in all of that. But because of his own self-talk, because of all that he has said to himself and what he believes of himself, not so much believing of himself in his own ability, but because of God in his life, he knows that he can overcome anything that came his way. Verse 41.
And the Philistine moved forward and came near to David with his shield bearer in front of him. And when the Philistine looked down and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance.
Okay. So the Philistines looked down, obviously, because this is a giant right up there. At times, again, when we look at what we're going through, what we're dealing with, it looks so big that we're almost sort of overshadowed by it. Yeah? And he disdained him because he said, well, this guy is no match. But what he failed to realize is that, they say that the size of a dog, is not what determines the fight in that dog. So have you ever seen one of those small, really, chihuahuas, whatever they call them, really small dogs, and they're like making big threats, like, they're going to and you see the big one trying to run away. Yeah. So it's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog, as they say. So what is it? So David here is a small guy looking really small, a youth. But this Goliath is a champion, he's won many battles. Yeah? He has experience of war. David had none of those. But nonetheless, what David believed of himself and of the God that he was serving, and all that he had said to himself, put him at an advantage over this guy. Because he came in as an underdog. He came in as an underdog. In fact, and he came in even without any equipment. Saul was trying to sort of kit him up, but he said, you know what? I can't fight with this. All I really need to harm myself with is my mind. I need to get my mind tuned up. I need to be focused to be able to use my sling and stone. That is, your sling and stone is that thing that you're used to using. Yeah? So read on.
And the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David.
Hold on there. Very important point. Yeah? Have you noticed that his words has changed? The Philistine's words has changed. Before now, he was the one making threats. All of a sudden, because David won't back down, he's now beginning to think that, hold on a minute, this guy is coming to me, does he think I'm a dog? Yeah, I said, am I a dog that you're coming to me with sticks and stuff like that? Yeah? Now, his own self-talk has changed all of a sudden because somebody decided to stand to him. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay.
What's it called?
Yeah, keep on reading.
The Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the field.
Okay.
Then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword and with a spear
Come
and
on
with a
now.
javelin.
Yeah?
But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, who you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head.
Yeah.
And I will give the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Now, the reason why I wanted us to read all of that is for us to see the conversation going on there. You know, how a supposed underdog, believes so much in not just in himself, but in the God that believes in him, that was willing to take up a giant. And we could sort of relate this to any challenge that we're facing. Anything. Yeah? From your vision or your purpose to achieve something in life, to your finances, to your relationships, to your current job, to your health, to anything. Yeah? At times you look at life, in fact we all look at life from a certain perspective, and that is informed by what we say to ourselves. You know, someone said that, you know, the reason why people try to send their children to certain schools is because they come out with a certain confidence. It's not so much the fact that they're teaching them something that they're not teaching in any other school, but they so build a level of confidence in those children that make them believe that they can achieve anything. That's why some people send their children to Arrow, or they won't get them all the way to Oxford or Cambridge. It's not because they're better than the next Joe Bloggs down the road. But it's because when you go through those sort of that system, you mix with people that also believe that they can do something. Yeah? Bible says that he that walks with the wise will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. Proverbs, yes. Now, what that means is that the fact that you're working with a wise person all of a sudden begins to make you believe that you can also be, you can say wise things, you can do wise things, you can carry out wise actions. Yeah? I mean, when I began to read books, and I began to sort of spend time with authors, coming from someone that my self-talk to myself at the time was that, you know, I don't imagine I can ever write a book, or I can never do anything. But when I began to spend time with people in that way, I realized that, hold on a minute, these guys don't have two heads. I actually at times make more sense than these people. So what happens is that a certain level of confidence develops, and you begin to change what you say to yourself from, well, I can't do this. You begin to now say, well, maybe I can. And then gradually you move to, well, I can. And once you settle in I can, that drives your life. Now, if you've just come to attend this session now, it's very easy to lose, you know, where we're coming from in terms of our definition of success and all of that. Because when I'm saying I can, you know, I'm not talking about, well, you can just say, okay, well, I'm going to be a billionaire tomorrow, so I'll go for it. Yeah. Well, it could well be the journey, but there has to be purpose behind that. Yeah? There has to be purpose behind that. What I'm saying is that for where we are going with our lives, it is what we are saying to ourselves that really matters. I was saying to someone yesterday that at times we live our lives such a way that we're so busy on the road, right there on the go. Now, we hardly ever sit down and allow ourselves to even really talk to us.
So what was that?
You're so on the road, so busy, that means no friends, doing things here and there, and you don't really allow yourself to talk to you. Perhaps because you are afraid of what you will hear. But I'm saying, why don't you preempt it? Why don't you provoke it? Why don't you be proactive about it? As opposed to waiting to hear the negative things that yourself would have to say to you, why don't you program your own self by beginning to speak positive things into your own life? And that is why I encourage everybody, people that know me, they will know that I would always say, you know what, you need to read books that are inspirational, that are godly, read your Bible. Because if you don't know what to say to yourself, you won't have anything to say when it's time to say something. I mean, when I was working on the other book, the second book, many times that I said to myself that I can't do this. And they were not necessarily voices that my wife next to me would have heard. They were just things in my mind. She might be next to me, but I'm thinking these things, or I'm saying these things to myself. She's thinking, well, yeah, just keep on doing. But I'm there, and I'm saying, you know what, I can't do this. But I realized that because I've learned what I'm telling you now over time, I've learned that when I hear those voices, you see, you can't. Goliath spoke to David, alright, Goliath spoke to the children of Israel, but guess what? They didn't respond to him. But when he spoke to David, David had to respond. Because in order for you to hear something speak to you, you must come back with a response. If you're hearing yourself, I can't, or I'm not made for this, or we can't do this, we can't do that. We are, in our family, we don't get married until we're 40. This, we don't do that. We don't do all of that. You need to come back with your own counter words. And you need to get so proactive about it. As opposed to waiting to hear the negative words, begin to speak positive things to yourself. Create your own possibilities in your own mind. And that is why I said to you guys, read your Bible, know what the Word of God has got to say about you, so that what you're saying to yourself is not new, it's what God has already said about you. But usually we focus on what human beings have said about us. Oftentimes, and those things are never good anyway. As opposed to going to the Word to find out what God has said about you. And imbibing those words and speaking them to ourselves continually over time. I end with this story in the Bible. We all know the story. The disciples, Peter, and I think it was just Peter, went fishing with his colleagues at the time. But then he toiled all night and he caught nothing. He came back, and people that saw him would have thought this guy is busy, he's doing stuff anyway because he was busy mending his net. But what we don't know is the fact that in his own mind, he had quit. He had said to himself, away with fishing, this fishing business is not paying anymore. These are I'm telling about conversations in his mind now. But then Jesus came along and said to him, why don't you launch out into the deep? And the self-talk that he had been feeding himself all night long rushed up to the surface again. And he said to Jesus, oh, Master, we have toiled all night. We have been working out at this thing and it's not yielding any result. But Jesus, in his very way of being able to provoke us with just one word or two, said to him, launch out into the deep. And Peter in godly wisdom, said to him, well, yes, even though what I'm saying to myself, or what I keep hearing of myself, is that I can't catch any fish tonight. But Lord, because you have said it, your own words, at your words, yeah, and this is why I say, keep saying what he has said to us, at your words, I will go again. And they went into the boat and went fishing again. And this time around, they caught a net-breaking catch. And that's what happens when we let go of those negative notions or ideas or self-talks in our mind, and we embrace what God has said concerning us, and on the strength of His words to us, that we say to ourselves, we're able to launch back in and see results. The better we get at doing this, the more results we will see across different areas of our lives. You know, one thing that I don't want to do in my life is that I don't want to raise small people. When I say small people, not physically small people, but I don't want to raise people with small ideas. I don't want to raise people with, small thinking. And I'm going to, in July, I'm going to teach something along the lines of the Lilliputian church. You know Lilliput. Has anybody heard Lilliput before? The word Lilliput. Okay. There's a maybe I'm not pronouncing it right, but I think I am. There's a. Has anybody read or watched this movie? Gulliver's Travel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So the giant there, or the little people, what are they called?
Oh, I don't know.
They're called Lilliputs.
They're like dwarves.
Yes.
Like this size.
Yeah.
But they have big fingers.
Not called that.
Sorry? They had small thinking.
That's small thinking.
Yes. They had small thinking. Yeah. But the point is, it's a thought that I'm developing in my mind. Because I think that for a lot of us in church, I don't know, it seems like when we come to church, at times we drop our brains at the door, or we just sort of give up on some ideas that could well be God. And we just shut down, and we don't want to do great things for God. And I believe that we should all aspire to do great things for God. That is, for me, I want to do great things for God. But at the same time, I'm not afraid to start small. Because great things don't start great, they start small. You know, Bible says, do not despise the days of little beginnings. Yeah. So what I'm saying in essence is that I want us to begin to think big, begin to think about, and the more you think big things, you find that you're also able to begin to encourage yourself with very positive thoughts about achieving them. I don't like to hang around people that keep telling me I can't do things, because they drain life out of me. You know, I don't want to do that. There's some people that, if they're calling me, I don't pick up. I just send them a text message. Because I don't want to get, and those conversations last long. You know, you're there talking about these things that they're giving you a million and one reasons why it can't be done. You know what I mean? Yeah, I want to spend my time with people that, by the time I'm off the phone, I spend 2 hours, but it feels like, you know what, man, this is life-giving. This is life-giving. That's what we need to focus on to develop ourselves. And the more we're able to focus on, the self, or what we're saying to ourselves, and what people are saying to us, so you need to control what you're hearing. And as you do that, you'll find out that, you will go far in fulfilling your dreams in life.